Sign up at the end of this review to get my personal gear list.
Let's put it this way. Here's the theory of the world according to Bob. It takes a winter to teach people how to think ahead. Just go back 10,000 years. You know, really.
Yeah.
Tony Policastro here from the Acoustic Letter, and today is an exciting day. I feel like every day is exciting, but this one is especially exciting because we are here at the Taylor Guitar Factory. And sitting here with us today is Bob Taylor.
Hey, Tony.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
What a pleasure, not only to be outside of Bozeman when it's nice and rainy and cold, but also to be here, and thank you for taking time out to chat with us.
Yeah,
and,
my pleasure. I lived in Bozeman when I was a kid for a couple of years.
You did?
Yeah, my folks are from there.
Paul was right. That's very cool. Very cool. So when did you move out of Bozeman?
I was 4 or 5 years old when my dad joined the Navy.
Okay. Any recollection of Bozeman whatsoever?
Yeah, I've got memories.
No way.
Sure
Nice.
did.
Very good.
I lived on Durston Road. I remember.
That's awesome. I actually take that road to Musicville every single day. Yes, yes. So here we are at Taylor Guitars, and this is my second time here, and it always impresses me being here. Being a guitar lover and just enthusiast and player, seeing the guitars being made, being able to play all the different guitars at once and compare and contrast, etc. I have one question just right off the bat, and that is, when you first started this company, did you have this in mind?
No, I had, what I had in mind was that I'd make enough guitars to sell enough guitars to be able to keep making guitars. You know, it was kind of like the sustainability of the business sort of plan.
Sure.
And so it was. I didn't want to do anything but this.
Nice.
And I didn't know what that would look like, but it's obviously grown beyond what I thought.
Yeah, so there was serious passion because your main objective at first was to just keep making guitars.
Yeah, people sometimes ask me what I'd do if I didn't make guitars, and my answer is I'd make guitars, you know. There isn't another version of me.
Very cool. That's well, in just talking to you in the brief moments before we even started the cameras rolling, I sense that passion, and we were just chatting about the various guitars, etc. And we were talking about sustainability.
Yeah.
And one of the things that struck me pretty deeply, because you know, being a guitar player, you go to various guitar stores and you see a lot of guitars hanging on the wall, and you go to the next store and you see a lot more guitars hanging on the wall.
Yeah, more than ever.
And you know, going through the shop, guitars are being made. A lot of guitars are being made, and you have what I think is an extremely unique and passionate view of the long term of our industry. And I really want you to shed a little bit of light on that, where it first of all came from, because you've done a ton of work with sustainable harvesting of woods and treatment of woods, etc. And I know that's just the tip of the iceberg. I want to know what first got you into that, and if you could share with us some of the projects that you're working on.
Yeah, I'm glad you are bringing it up. I feel, you know, just generally speaking, I feel like I'm being funneled. My life is being funneled down in towards this idea of sustainability. And in that, I mean healthy forests that can provide guitar wood. And where are they going to be? That's part of the question. What woods they're going to be? That's another part of the question. I started seeing this. You could see it. The handwriting was on the wall during my lifetime as a guitar builder. We're hitting our 40th anniversary momentarily, and and during that time, I realized that I'm living in the area where you cross the threshold of there was all the wood in the world to there's not anymore. And people have heard about dwindling supplies and what's happening to the rainforest and these things, but we live up here and we don't really see it. But if you could go out and see it, I always think if I could take any client to any wood supplier, I don't mean a store where they sell it, but I mean where the wood is really produced, and show them where wood really comes from, every one of them would go home being an absolute passionate believer in sustaining these species. And so I watched wood change. I watched wood get smaller. Not only just the sizes of the wood that I used to use, but less available. The stacks of them diminished. And so in order for us to get the wood that we needed, we had to go primitive to get modern. You know, you've got to get into a country and quit using logging roads. You've got to quit using the normal approach that's been done for hundreds of years, where you take down a lot of trees to get the ones that you want, and the others get turned into whatever.
Right.
And so in Honduras, we set up operations with through another organization called Fundación Madera Verde, which is Spanish for greenwood, you know, and we got 3 villages going that cut wood for us out of a nice biosphere, and the take is so small that it doesn't really put a dent into it, right? And the money goes to them.
Yeah.
Our spruce comes from a place in the United States, Pacific Rim Tonewoods, and Steve McMinn, who owns that, is a very sustainably minded person. He gets it from the right places. And so back in the days before we could do anything about where the wood comes from, our first mandate was don't waste any wood that we have. And that's a lot of what you see in the factory.
Right.
Because we really use the wood efficiently, and we use it down to the squeal if we possibly can. We ended up getting into Cameroon with our own ebony mill there, because the first step to sustainability anywhere, especially in a third world country, is legality.
Right,
okay?
right.
And to get there and make that thing legal and make it ethical and make it to where you're taking care of people is the first steps to having something that can be a going concern. Because typically woods in the world, you go in, you take them, you leave. When it's all gone, you go in somewhere else and you take it and you leave. When that's all gone, you go in somewhere else and you take it and you leave. That's how wood has been obtained for thousands of years.
Yeah.
We're at the end of that. There's no place to go. There's no new frontier. Right. So it's those experiences that have brought me around to the things we're doing now, like forming a company with Steve McMinn from Pacific Rim Tonewoods in Hawaii, where we can sustainably manage koa, the koa that's already there. I don't mean sustainably. A lot of people say, for how long? Well, sustainably means forever, you know, but a lot of times we think, well, for 30 years or 40 years, that would get me through my life. Oh, I have enough wood to get me through my life. Well, that's not sustainable. Right? So you have to think of a plan to get yourself through forever.
Yeah.
I think Taylor will still be here, this company, in 100 years from now. So Steve and I are planning on probably recovering old sugarcane property, planting mahogany forests on it, which we won't see.
Right.
Because we'll be long gone,
Yeah.
you know, several generations behind. It'll take 100 years, 80 years or so before that wood is harvestable. Wow. You know?
What was it like? You said, you know, you go into a place, you take wood, you leave. You go into a place, you take wood, you leave. The kind of irresponsible way to harvest it. You've seen that firsthand. What is it like to look out on that and see, you know, a clear cut, or just see trees just sitting there?
It's depressing when you see a clear cut that's huge, especially when you're trying to use the wood for something like guitars.
Yeah.
For example, a spruce tree that we use is this big around. It's 280, 350, 450, 500 years old. So you can clear cut a temperate forest, a Douglas fir forest, and it'll grow back. Just drive up the Olympic Peninsula and there'll be signs, Georgia Pacific. This lot clear cut in 1959, and you can see it's ready to be cut again. Right. Well, they're growing 2x4s and plywood wood and things like that.
Sure.
But you can't get a guitar out of that. Right. And nobody's going to wait 400 years. And so when we see that, we think, how are we going to sustain those? And so all of those answers we're not really sure about, because it takes the cooperation of a lot of people. But species that we could grow in 75 or 100 years, that's, believe it or not, short enough term for us to get excited about, even though we're thinking 100 years.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating to have that viewpoint now and say, you know, I care about guitar making now, but I also care about guitar making way after me, and way after me. So that, I mean, I've always found that guitar is such an emotional thing. It's not just a thing you pick up and you play. There's a lot tied to it. Now, when you look even deeper as to where it actually comes from, the raw materials,
there's a lot of tropical species in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, name a first world country on the equator. You know, you really can't. And and you could get into the whole sociology of it, you know, and what different climates do to societies. But let's put it this way. Here's the theory of the world according to Bob. It takes a winter to teach people how to think ahead. Just go back 10,000 years. You know, really.
Yeah.
When you live in a place where every day is the same day, it's the same 12 hours, it's the same temperature, it's the same amount of rain, it's the same amount of fruit on the tree, you don't have to think about next season or next year.
Right.
And so you don't develop a society in the same way that if you lived in Norway, and if you don't think about how you're going to get through the winter, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And so we're different depending on where we live on the planet.
Sure, for sure.
And the climate is hard there. And so what we live in is a world where a lot of the beautiful woods for guitars are tropical, and those locations have been exploited for too long by outsiders.
Gosh.
And so when we're doing something like ebony there, of course, we're trying to not exploit it. We're trying to be an insider and bring economy there and have some sustainability. But at the same time, we think, well, if we want to have something for the future, we need to also grow woods that can grow in northern climates where we live. I sent Steve a picture the other day of some guy with some mahogany trees this big around in a forest, and I said, we have to have a picture of you and me standing by trees this big before we croak, you know. He's like, I'm all about it.